Hello and welcome back to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. I'm your host, Holly Spear,
This is Kate Carter.
And I'm Kylie Colwell.
and we're coming to you today to bring you an update on an unsolved case that we covered back in February. This is the case of Morgan Nick, and it remains one of Arkansas's most heartbreaking unsolved mysteries. In 1995, 6-year-old Morgan Nick disappeared from a ballpark in Alma while playing near a Little League game. Despite decades of searching and numerous leads, her whereabouts remain unknown. However, in a major breakthrough that was announced October 2024, just last Wednesday, DNA evidence linked a now deceased man, Billy Jack Lincks, to her abduction. Lincks, who attempted a kidnapping of another child just weeks after Morgan's disappearance, is now the prime suspect in her case. And today we are going to link her case, and you can listen to it for the first time or you can re-listen to it. So this is the case of Morgan Nick. So Morgan's family was a military family, and both her mom and her dad were originally from Arkansas. In 1993, the family moved back to Arkansas so that they could be closer to their extended family that still lived there. They settled in the town called Ozark, Arkansas. Morgan's mom started an in-home daycare. This allowed her to stay home with her kids while making an extra income to help support the family. So children came to the Nick's house every day and even on the weekends. On June 9th, 1995, it was a normal Arkansas Friday. Morgan's mom, Colleen, had the daycare kids coming over and already had activities planned for them. She made the kids breakfast and they did some crafts. That night, after the children went home, Colleen was taking Morgan to a Little League baseball game. Morgan had 2 other siblings, but they were younger, and Colleen was planning on dropping off the little kids with their grandparents and just taking Morgan, since all the little kids would be kind of hard to look after. They probably wouldn't be old enough to care about the game anyway, so the mom is just going to take Morgan. The baseball field was in downtown Alma, which is only about 25 miles from Ozark. Colleen gave the kids a bath and cooked them grilled cheese sandwiches for dinner. And then, like she planned, Colleen dropped the little kids off at the grandparents' house and headed to the game. So this particular game was a little later than usual, and this was because it had been raining for a few days straight the week before in Alma, and it had rained out all the Little League games. So this was kind of a makeup game, and it was a little bit later than would usually be for a little kid's game. Morgan and her mom make it to the field, and this is a little field with a double fence and only 2 sets of bleachers. There's a small parking lot-ish area with no bathrooms, no concession stands, and Morgan and her mom took a seat on the bleachers. There was a group of little kids that Morgan knew. They were running around playing, but Morgan was pretty content sitting with her mom. Colleen said Morgan was not necessarily shy, but that she just preferred to sit with her mom rather than running around with the other little kids. But the kids keep coming up to Morgan and begging her to come play with them and run around with them. So right before the game ended, the group of little kids came back to Morgan one more time and asked her to go catch fireflies with them. And this piqued Morgan's interest. But Colleen tells Morgan that she thinks it's just too dark to be playing right now. Colleen then said that she went back and forth in her head, thinking that she might be a little too protective. She thought about the times that she was told by other parents that she needed to give her kids room to grow. Colleen was one of those parents that walked their kid to and from the bus stop every day, even though it was less than a block down the road. Colleen thinks, well, her friend's kids have been playing there all night. She'll be fine. Surely, it's a fenced-in, tiny area with just a few rows of cars in the dirt parking lot, and she could see all of the area at any time. Colleen gives in, and Morgan was so excited that her mom was going to let her go that she flung her arms around her and gave her a kiss on the cheek. But it was in that moment that Colleen said that she felt a weird feeling, that even though it was a safe place for her daughter to be playing, and even though she was with a group, Colleen had a mother's intuition that something felt off. And she watched as Morgan ran off, the last one in the line of little kids chasing each other. Colleen turned back to the game, and this is the last time that she would see her daughter.
First of all, how sad.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Kate.
I'm having trauma already, but
Yeah.
how sad. Also, every mom will tell you, and I now completely understand as well, when you have a mom's intuition about something, you do it. I'm having an intuition that my baby's hungry, feed your baby, things like that. Yeah. So if she felt off about that moment, I know she regrets it to this day, obviously, but I can't even, I can't imagine.
Yeah. And this is a small town too, and this is in 1995. So I think just like walking down the road is
Totally normal.
pretty normal. Yeah, very
Yeah.
normal. But Colleen's
Yeah.
one of those parents she's gonna walk them to and from the bus stop. So anyways, this is really sad, but probably the first time that she's ever let her go off on her own. So where the kids are playing is technically a parking lot, but it's fenced in. And I say it's technically a parking lot because it's not official like parking lot with like concrete or whatever like you would think of. The kids aren't just like playing in a dangerous parking lot. It's more of like a gravel lot where you pull up and kind of park wherever, and then you walked like to the field that was just, you could literally see it, you know? So there was a sand pile at the back of the parking lot, and that's kind of where the kids were congregating and playing. As the game started to wrap up, the kids started to head back in the direction of the field, but Morgan stopped to get the sand out of her shoes. She sits down on the ground, thinking she would be right behind him. The kids ran ahead of her, leaving her to tie her shoe on the ground. A boy named Ty actually did stay back with her as she emptied the sand out of her shoes, but when she put her shoe back on and started to tie them, he turned around to catch up with his friends. This is the last time that someone other than the kidnapper would see Morgan Nick. So the two kids' names that she was playing with was Ty and Jessica, and they made it back to their parents who were sitting with Morgan's mom. Colleen notices that Morgan is not with them and asks, "Where's Morgan?" Ty and Jessica turn around, not even realizing that Morgan was not right behind them. She'd never caught up with them after tying her shoe. They said she was right behind us. She had to tie her shoe. Colleen got up to go get her. Colleen didn't see any cars leaving, but she couldn't find Morgan. This was at 10:40 p.m. In 2 to 3 minutes, Morgan had disappeared. Morgan's father drove down to the field to help everyone look, and at 11:07 p.m., the police got a call about a missing child at the baseball park, which was just a block down the road from the police station. Police pull up and see a group of people gathered around. The officer that was first to arrive knew Colleen. Like many times when tragedy strikes in a small town, people did not think the worst. They were looking for Morgan, obviously, but thought it was more likely that she was just missing, not abducted. Morgan probably walked off and was lost, or a grandparent had miscommunicated with the parents and ended up picking her up. But when the police began processing this as a crime scene, it dawned on the public that this was something much worse. That night, it was all hands on deck. The public assembled to help police. The public formed groups and made sections to rope off and started searching. They knocked on doors, every door in the area. It had just rained and some of the fields were badly flooded, but people searched every inch that they could. Although this was kind of a scrappy search, police knew that if Morgan was put into a car, they only had a little bit of time to find a lead before it was too late. Police pick up every scrap in the parking lot looking for clues. Coke cans, cigarette butts, trash, anything, and preserved it in case they needed it later. What they didn't see was tire track or anything to indicate that someone had spun out or sped off or there was any struggle marks of any kind, nothing like that. Police got in front of the media every chance they got to highlight the search and begged the public to be vigilant. But police know, as we know, that the limelight of a fresh case would only last so long before the news moved on to another story. So the police begged Morgan's family to start getting up and addressing the public. And it's not that Morgan's parents didn't want to. At this point, Morgan's mother and father were completely devastated. They didn't feel like they could speak, let alone get up and be hounded with questions from reporters. But they did, in hopes that the public would take more of an interest in Morgan's case. Morgan's mother did well addressing the public and begging for answers, but John, Morgan's father, had a harder time. John remembers one instance where he was doing an interview and he was pushed out of the way by a camera crew. The interviewer actually told him they didn't care to hear from him, that they wanted to only hear from the mom. John saw the media as rude and disrespectful, and he disliked them, so John kind of sat in the background. And as you've probably guessed, this made people speculate that John was uninvolved or didn't care. And then people began pointing fingers at John. But police spoke out saying that John was very helpful and that he was just as involved as Colleen and never denied them any information. They had no information that would lead them to believe that John has anything to do with Colleen's disappearance. John was severely hurt to hear people were blaming him. John says that he doesn't care that people talk about him as long as they're talking about Morgan too. Police talked to the children, Ty and Jessica, the children that were playing with Morgan. The children tell the cop that they saw a man talking to Morgan actually, and he was a white male with a scruffy beard wearing shorts. His shirt was off or open, and he had hair on his chest and stomach. He was driving a red truck with a white camper, He was sitting in his truck in the parking lot smoking, and at times he would open the door or lean on the hood. Police tell the public to be on the lookout for a red truck driven by a white male that was short, white, and had a scruffy beard. In the meantime, the next night, police bring in Ty and Jessica again and try to get a sketch of the man. The children do give enough information to result in a sketch. The police's theory at this point was that it was a grab and go kind of situation. A man saw Morgan at the end of the night, saw an opportunity, grabbed her, and took off. Police ask anyone that was at the game that may have videoed the game to turn in their film. Remember, this is kind of an era where everyone's videoing everything with probably like camcorders. There's a home video for literally everything. So people start turning over their videos. And in one of those videos that was turned in, you can clearly see a red truck with what looks like a white camper on the back. So if you were looking at home plate, you could actually see the red truck off into the distance in the background. Police then asked for all video from the entire complex, the high school field, any baseball field, to see if the person that kidnapped Morgan had been prowling the area. In videos, they find the same red truck at another baseball field earlier that night. And police they're not able to see the license plate or anything. So when I say the same red truck, it looks exactly the same, but we don't have anything to clearly say, like, this is the exact same truck.
Also have like the white camper.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, what are the odds?
Apparently, this is a truck that is like very popular at the time.
Arkansas in the 90s.
It's very on brand for Arkansas, I guess. Police urge the owner to come forward. They don't blame the person with the red truck. They're just like, if this is yours, come claim it so we can clear you and move on. But no one does. You would think that if the kidnapper was just a parent or family member or coach of a child playing, that they would come forward and clear it up. But again, no one does.
These like small town little league teams, everyone knows like all the other parents and what they drive, and no one knows who this is. Yeah.
Yeah. So police are definitely thinking that this is the kidnapper. Although no one came forward to claim the truck, the police received a flood of tips of possible sightings of the red truck. Police received hundreds of calls. One of these was in Texas, where a teacher was almost abducted by a man with a red pickup truck. The woman actually ended up getting away, but was run over while escaping. There was a man in the same county that drove a red pickup truck with a camper attached to it, just like the report. The man actually ended up taking shoe polish or something of the sort and riding on the back of his truck. I did not abduct her, or I didn't take her, or something like that, because he had been stopped so many times. In some instances, the public took it upon themselves to catch red trucks. Owners of red trucks were followed or blocked into parking lots until police arrived. A man gave an interview and said that he'd been stopped multiple times, but that he didn't mind. He said it was a minor inconvenience and he was just glad that police were doing their job. But no leads from this panned out. So then, 24 years go by.
What?
Ish. There's some more that we'll talk about, but a lot of time goes by. It basically goes cold. So after 24 years, another police chief begins working on Morgan's case. And this is Jeff Pointer, who becomes the new chief. Jeff decides that he would start from scratch, go back to the beginning, go back over everything that was done the first few days of the investigation. Just 3 months after being appointed to the case, Jeff Pointer asked for a meeting with Morgan's family. He tells the family that the police department received over 8,300 leads in Morgan's case. The detective walked the family through what the police had. They believe that Morgan Nick may not have been the only target that night. So the first target, a teenage white female, was walking on the side of the road in Alma when a red truck passes by her and then stops and backs up. The driver rolls down the passenger window and asks the girl if she would like a ride into downtown Alma. The girl denies the ride. But the man doesn't leave. So the girl slowly starts walking back on her path down the road. But the driver just sits in his truck behind her, watching her walk. Finally, after some time, the driver gives up and ends up driving on. Next, on the other side of town, a mom hears her 2 little girls, age 5 and 6, who are playing outside, scream. She runs outside just in time to see a red truck with a white camper pull away and drive down the road. Then, later in the day, 2 teenage boys were coming home from the baseball field, and the 2 boys were stopped by a white male, again in a red truck, who got onto the boys for walking in the middle of the road. The boys watched the white truck turn down Walnut Street, which is the street of the ballpark that Morgan would be kidnapped from later that night. Then again, later that afternoon, a few 10-year-old boys were riding bikes down the road. when a man in a red truck with a white camper told the boys to get out of the road. Then, as we know, a red truck with a white camper is spotted in the back of a home video at the baseball game. Then another sighting, after Morgan would have been kidnapped. A group of teenagers were, quote, doing an activity down a road close to the river. And it was
Smoking weed.
I was thinking like Lover's Lane, kind of like doing an activity. And then I'm pretty sure they were smoking weed. So yeah. So while they were doing this activity, they saw a truck pull down the road, and they said they thought they saw a male driving the truck, and it looked like he was holding down a little kid. When the group heard that the kidnapping had occurred, they came forward and reported this to police. Police say
Wait. Hold on. Kylie, say what I was going to say, because that didn't make any sense.
They waited until after she was reported missing and it was in the news, despite seeing a child being held down on a suspicious part of a road by the lake. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And we're getting a lot. There's going to be a lot of these, like, tell you later kind of things. This was when they found out. The kids went and reported it, but we have some people not reporting for like 6 years anything. So it's very hard.
I'm not saying this particular case, but like I feel like a lot of these with like big cases, you'll have a lot of false reporting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh yeah, I saw that truck.
Yeah, and I think that it's possible that some of these leads, I mean, I think there ends up being 5. I mean, there's a lot more tips, but these 5 credible ones are the ones that police have picked out to match up with the timeline of events, but I think it's entirely possible that some of them may be false. So yeah, they come forward and they tell the police what happened that night. For investigators, this draws a clear path of interactions that the kidnapper had on his way to the baseball field up until after he kidnapped Morgan. Okay, so let's talk about people of interest. First person of interest was named Charlie Vines. Charlie Vines, or Charles, beat and killed Lily Jones, an 89-year-old woman who lived alone and was legally blind. So, disgusting.
Oh.
Yeah. Kicked in Lily's door on April 10th, 1993, and savagely beat and assaulted her. DNA evidence was limited at the time, and the case was stalled. 2 months later, on June 23rd, 1993, 2 months later, Juanita Wolford was discovered murdered in her bed. The crime scene would be described as so horrific that it was beyond description. A man named Danny Bennett was arrested and charged with this murder, and the town breathed a sigh of relief. But not for long, because on August 10th, 1995, 74-year-old Ruth Henderson was assaulted and killed in a crime scene that was identical to Wolford's murder. Police realized that they had the wrong guy. Bennett was eventually released, and the case goes cold for 5 years until March 2000, when a parent of a girl comes home just in time to find the horrific crime scene of their 16-year-old daughter being assaulted by Charles Vines. So they walk in on this happening just in the nick of time, and it's Charles Vines.
Listeners, if you could see our faces right now.
I paused for the facials because I can see them. But yeah, just a miracle that he even walked in. I mean, she definitely would have been killed. So Charles Vine's DNA would match the DNA that was collected at the other crime scenes. And Vines would later be named the River Valley Killer.
I'm sure you're going to get to this, but I'm confused how a man with an MO for like elderly women and then one teenager. I don't know, it seems a little different.
I think so too. And I think it might explain a little bit later. At this time, Charles made a deal with police that they would ask him about other unsolved cases. At this time, there was cases like Melissa Witt, Morgan Nick, and others that were unsolved in Arkansas at the time. If he confessed and led police to solving the case, they would take the death penalty off the table. And if you don't remember, Melissa Witt is another case that I covered, and it's labeled the Mickey Mouse murder, if you want to listen to it. And just a quick rundown of Melissa's case, but you should listen to it, actually, but, subtle plug. In 1994, Melissa was a 19-year-old college student. She would go to the bowling alley after class to meet up with her mom, and she would be attacked and abducted in the parking lot. She was abducted in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and Fort Smith is about 20 minutes from Alma, where Morgan was abducted. I think that they're thinking that if they pin him for this case, it makes sense that he would be also pinned for Morgan's case, but they don't pin, if you know the case, spoiler alert, it's unsolved, so they don't pin him for this case, but I think they're trying to connect these links because they really have nothing else at this point. Melissa's body would be found in the woods, propped up against a large boulder. Today, no one has been convicted of her murder. Police cross-checked Vine's whereabouts at the time that Morgan was kidnapped. The detectives found out that Charles Vines usually picked victims that were in close proximity to his residence. And at the time of Morgan's abduction, Vines did live relatively close to that baseball field. There was also a prison rumor that Charles had confessed to another inmate about Morgan's murder. So this is kind of where we get this connection. I don't know how I feel about the prison rumor, just because Charles is pretty famous in the River Valley right now, and Morgan Nick's case is pretty famous. And this tip that they get is kind of from secondhand information, maybe third-hand information. So-and-so tells so-and-so who reports it, you know? So anyways, that's the tip, but you can see where police are kind of connecting the dots on this one. So the FBI and Alma cops want to talk to Charles. They go to interview him. But by the time the police get to him, they learn that he has cancer and is already in a state of being nonverbal and incoherent, and he dies a few days later. Officers also have reason to believe that he may have had a red truck with a white camper at the time, but the officers have been unable to trace the exact truck to Vines with any kind of VIN or license plate number. I think it was like a neighbor saying that he had one, or someone said that they saw a red truck with a white camper. So it's kind of a rumor at this point. No more information, that kind of just fizzles out. All police can do at this point is talk to people that Vines knew and search places that Vines frequented. In the interview where Vines confessed to the other murders, Vines said that he had thought the best place to hide a body was under rocks and concrete. Police bring cadaver dogs to Charles' property and the road by the lake that the teenagers saw a man holding a child down in the car. Police want to search this area because this would have been the last place that Morgan was seen, if that was her. Police bring out these dogs, actually 3 different dogs at 3 different times, and all the dogs alerted to different areas. So police get permission to start digging. And to the great disappointment of everyone, nothing was recovered at any places that the dogs alerted to. Dogs and cadaver dogs, scent dogs are really good, but they can alert to things other than dead bodies, like dead animal bodies or food or really anything. And at this time, the area had become completely flooded and was flooded pretty regularly at the time. So they think that it's possible that could have thrown the dogs off to alerting to different scents. Later, Vines would confess to the murder of Juanita Wofford. This is kind of where the lead fizzles out. Let's fast forward to May 2020. Investigators are going back over Morgan's case. They reconnect with some of the witnesses listed in the case file. One of these individuals comes in to talk to investigators and claims that he knows the individual that could be responsible for Morgan's abduction. Yes, this is 2020. So another person reporting things like way too long.
Maybe he just got a little bored during the pandemic. I don't know.
Yeah. He was getting bored. So, but actually, I don't know. Okay, so police today are not familiar with this person. This person is named Billy Jack Lincks. Police learned that Lincks attempted to kidnap a child just 3 months after Morgan's disappearance. An 11-year-old girl told police that she was walking with her younger brothers in downtown Van Buren near the Sonic. By the way, Van Buren is about 10 minutes down the road from Alma, which is where Morgan was kidnapped. When the man pulled up to them in a red pickup truck, the man talked to all 3 of the siblings, but it was very obvious that he was interested in speaking with the girl. So he offered the boys money to go get them something to eat, trying to lure the girl away. And this is scary because the man is actually able to lure all the children about 2 blocks down the road. The man offered the girl money and then made sexual comments to her and offered to pay her to get in the truck. The man dropped a cigarette out of his window and tried to get the little girl to come closer to pick up his cigarette. Thankfully, she yells for her brothers to come over and tells the man she's going to call the police. The children take off running towards the Sonic and hear the truck speed off. Police believe that if she would have come over to pick up the cigarette, he would have thrown her in his car. As the truck is speeding away, the children hear the sound of a loud noise of the truck crashing. So he hit something trying to flee. But he ends up I guess he didn't hit his truck too bad because he ends up reversing and speeding back off. So police are now looking for a driver of this car that the children describe, and it's been crashed. So this would make the news, and witnesses called in and told police that he had seen a man driving a truck talking to kids from across the street at a bank. So while this was going, this witness is like, yeah, I saw this entire interaction. And luckily not the entire interaction, but he saw the man talking to the kids. I don't think he saw maybe the kid's running or the guy, hitting the pole, but he saw an interaction that made him uncomfortable. And luckily he recorded the license plate because something just didn't seem right to him. Police search for the plate and find out that it is a 1986 red Chevrolet pickup, and it is registered to Billy Jack Lincks. Police easily get a search warrant for Billy's truck and Billy's house. Police see the truck in his driveway with damage that was consistent with the little wreck he had. So he's arrested and interviewed. Billy would obviously deny all of this. And he later kind of goes back a little bit and says, well, I remember drinking that night. I remember driving and talking to some kids and giving them money, but that's all I remember. But Billy is charged with sexual solicitation of a child in 1995. This is because police didn't really need Billy's admission, because when police found Billy's truck, they found paint fibers on the pole that he hit that matched his truck. And on the truck was fibers from the pole. So he's an idiot. He would die in prison in 2000. Yeah. Today, the little girl from that night would be interviewed by ABC and say that she remembers the truck being red and having a white camper. Investigators say that the truck lines up with the one from Morgan's abduction in even more ways than one. The group of boys that had been riding their bikes down the road that night that Morgan disappeared had said that the red truck had a dent in the side door, and this girl would say that she remembers a dent in the door as well. So this is great. Police had a search warrant for Lincks' truck, and all the evidence and all of the fibers should have been collected and stored in the Arkansas State Crime Lab. Investigators will be able to go back and search and see if anything in the truck can be linked to Morgan. Except,
I wonder what's coming next. Yeah.
None of the evidence collected from Lincks' truck in 1995 can be located.
Of course.
We don't know if it's lost. We don't know if it's destroyed. We don't know. Apparently, at the time, Lincks was given a polygraph questioning him about Morgan Nick, and he passed. And so that was it. They kind of stopped thinking that he was also responsible for Morgan Nick. Police only have documents describing the search of the truck, and the truck can't be found. Judging from the written record, there was blood found in the truck, but this is the 90s. The DNA is not advanced, and all we know is, yeah, it's blood. That's it.
He's my guy.
He's your
That's
guy.
who I'm going with. Yep.
Yeah. Originally, his property was searched. They dug around Billy's property, but they never broke through any concrete. And there was a concrete slab that was laid around the time that Morgan went missing. Police have now said that they will do a dig and they will be busting up this concrete. How freaking frustrating that they could potentially solve this case if they had this evidence. It's more likely than not. We know how evident DNA gets places. If Morgan was in that truck, it probably would be there, but we have nothing. All police can do is dig at his former residence, and they bust up the concrete, but find nothing. It's yet again another devastating blow to Morgan's family. Okay, so ready for this? Good news-ish. We know that we searched Lincks' truck and then lost the evidence, and now police can't find the truck. They don't know if it's wrecked, salvaged, sold in a state. They don't know. But then police just run the VIN number and realize that the VIN number is now registered to someone. Someone has bought this truck. Someone 30 miles from Alma. So this is literally a miracle, and the police rush to find this truck. They find out that ever since Lincks was arrested, the truck has been sitting at an impound lot. And the truck had never had any owners until it was auctioned off to the man who owns it now. He had actually bought it for him and his grandson to restore together. The camper is no longer attached, but you can see where the camper sat on the truck. Like there's damage to the truck where a camper would have sat. So police tear this truck apart, and they find a single blonde hair under the floor mat and blood on the dash. Police wait to see if there's any DNA. The blood test comes back from the FBI lab in Quantico. Sadly, there was not enough blood to find DNA. The hair test comes back, and it comes back inconclusive. So they're not saying that it is or isn't Morgan's hair. There's just not enough to determine. We know that, this truck has been sitting in the sun and in the heat in a lot for so long, and the DNA that would have been there, if there was any, is degraded at this point. They do keep as much DNA as much of the material as they can in hopes that maybe someday we might, develop to a point where we can test things like that, but they don't have enough right now. But here's a sliver of good news. There was a fiber found as well, and it was bluish green. which would have been the same color of the Girl Scout shirt that Morgan was wearing the night she disappeared. And FBI technicians were able to match the fiber to the Girl Scout shirt that Morgan was wearing. So this is huge. It's great. It's highly unlikely that some random fiber would match the Girl Scout shirt, but it's not so much of a home run as it sounds, because it's not enough to say that this is the shirt. It's just saying that it is a shirt that matches the Girl Scout shirts that they had at the time. It's the same fibers, it's the same everything, and it matches, and it's highly unlikely that it could be any other shirt. But we don't know that it's Morgan's shirt because we don't have Morgan's shirt. So this is not enough to say that Billy Lincks is the man that abducted Morgan or that Morgan was in his truck that night. But this tells police where to focus their attention. Everyone is still hopeful that Morgan will be found someday. However, they say they're realists, and they know that every day that they don't find Morgan, even this many years later, their chances of ever finding her or learning what happened to her decreases. But Morgan's family and investigators remain hopeful. They have said they're not going to get tunnel vision and decide they will continue to investigate any more leads that they get. They'll keep investigating Billy Lincks and Charlie Vines and any other leads that they get. Colleen Nix has started the Morgan Nix Foundation, which works to educate children and teenagers about personal and online safety and prevent child abductions. The foundation assists the Attorney General and local law enforcement agencies and families in missing persons cases. And what better people to carry on this legacy than the parents of Morgan Nick? And that's the unsolved case of Morgan Nick.
Well, that sucked.
I vote for Billy.
Yep, I do too.
I mean, there's 100 million red flags in this story, but everything kind of lines up to him anyways. Literally feel like I'm gonna have nightmares tonight. So are we gonna, like, at some point do, like, no kids, now that there's a child in our group? We're just gonna maybe do an off limits, or I don't know if you noticed, but at the end, listeners, you can't see our screens, but Millie has joined us because she was throwing a temper tantrum halfway through, and she's now watching and not listening because Mama don't want her listening to this yet. But
she doesn't know what we're saying.
No, she has no idea.
No idea.
I will say kudos to that 11-year-old girl who didn't get tricked into going into the truck. I was in that moment, I was thinking, I was like, you guys totally know when Millie's 11 years old, she's going to like fight. Like she's going to she'll like memorize the license plate, we're going to teach her to do all that stuff. But like in the 90s, that's really good for a girl to be like, I'm going to call the cops, like, and knowing all the signs and everything.
I mean, there was a lot of flaws in the case. We know that they completely lost the evidence, but there was a lot of public and police too doing a really good job keeping some of this case. And we don't know why the evidence was disappeared. It could be not on the investigators. Maybe it's the state crime lab or whatever. Yeah, it's one of those cases that my parents told me about when I was younger, to scare me kind of into knowing how serious it was to not talk to strangers and not, get left or leave anybody. So it was kind of a case that stuck with me that I kind of forgotten about.
That's so sad. I feel so bad for like her family. I mean, obviously I feel bad for her, but like her mom that night, like that's just to have that intuition and then for all of this to happen. And then the fact it's still unsolved.
Yep. And so it's still ongoing. They're still looking at things and trying to look at the case from different angles and restart. So maybe it's hopefully one that we'll get to update you guys on. Being from Arkansas, Alma's just an hour away from my hometown. We say on the episodes a lot of times, like, if you know anything, and I think sometimes it's far-fetched because we're not a big podcast right now, but if you listen to this from Arkansas and you know anything, or your parents know anything, you can contact the FBI and then tell us. Well, that's all I have today. So here we are, and on October 1st, 2024, Jeff Warner, the chief of police for Alma Police Department, would call a press conference to announce that they now had a suspect for the kidnapping of Morgan Nick. So as we know, in 1995, many leads were given to police about a red truck with a white camper shell that was seen at the abduction sites. And as we know, Billy Jack Lincks was someone who was questioned by police. He was never named the main suspect in the investigation, but he is named a suspect today. I think that he was a suspect in many people's minds before this. So what do you guys think?
Yes, the big red flag was the fact that one, the red truck. Two, he tried to kidnap another girl like a couple weeks later after Morgan Nick vanished.
Yes.
I mean, as Kate would say, a red flag. We should look into him.
There were a lot of red flags with him though. Like, didn't he get kind of like, not that there were witnesses, but didn't multiple people describe him like, and were like, this is him?
They described mostly his truck with the red camper shell, but police knew that he had driven the exact same truck that was reported being seen. And he did try to abduct another girl in the same red truck.
It always was frustrating. I remember when we were going over the story, how frustrating it was that, I mean, it feels like we had our guy right then and there. They just weren't able to tie anything to it. So,
yeah. And unfortunately, he has died in prison. So he's not here to answer any questions that police may have for him. They questioned him back in 1995, but he's not here. And police are just going to have to work with what they have. People that knew him, family members, and they're just going to have to keep chasing the leads. Law enforcement worked through more than 10,000 leads. And we know that there was one man that locals and law enforcement believed could have had something to do with the disappearance. And this was Billy Jack Lincks, a man who at the time drove that red truck with the white camper shell. He was arrested for sexual solicitation of a child on August 29th, 1995, just 12 weeks after Morgan's disappearance. In this instance, he tried to lure an 11-year-old girl into that same red pickup truck. Police Chief Warner said that Billy Jack Lincks was questioned back in 1995, and he denied any knowledge of Morgan's abduction. With no additional evidence or leads, investigators moved on. Fast forward to July 2019, Alma police decided to start the case over and just re-review everything. And this led police right back to Billy Jack Lincks. Miraculously, on July 28th, 2020, police were able to locate the truck that he owned years later, obviously with a new owner.
damn.
Yeah.
That truck stayed a while.
Yeah. And I can't remember if I covered that in the original episode. If you just listen to it, you'll know about it, I'm sure. But they were able to find his truck. They vacuumed everything, every little inch of his truck, they vacuumed it. And they turned over the canisters to the FBI and let them have the evidence to sift through, sort, and test. So out of that evidence, police found a hair with a root knot intact. So after they found this, police then learned that there was an advanced process where a lab out of Texas is doing DNA samples. They're able to find a DNA profile with a hair without a root sample. We know that usually you want the root intact to a hair to be able to link that to a DNA profile. But they send it to this lab in Texas. This lab in Texas is able to get a DNA profile from this hair and link it to Colleen Nick's, which is the mother of Morgan. So just through family DNA, we know that it's either Colleen's hair, her sister's hair, or her children's hair. And police go and they interview all of those people whose hair it could be, and they were never in the truck of Billy Lincks. So that leads police to conclude that this was Morgan Nick's hair.
It is insane to me that there is still a hair in the truck.
Yeah.
Like, you never got that truck detailed?
It's a miracle. You never got,
true.
Yeah, definitely never got his truck detailed. It's actually insane.
We shed like crazy. Like, I mean, my hair is everywhere. So I'm kind of not surprised that this many years down the road, even if the car was cleaned and stuff like that, there wasn't hair somewhere.
Right. And I think that those trucks back in that day, they had a lot of carpet in them instead of now we see like floor mats and stuff, but they had this like weird wiry carpet. I mean, when you think about an old truck, and I feel like hair and fibers can get kind of stuck in there pretty easily compared to like cars we have now. I know that like I can vacuum my car and I can see if I get the hair up. Yeah. So it is pretty crazy, but they found her hair in his truck.
I think I'm more like thrown off about the fact that the truck is still alive and like existing, and not in a junkyard somewhere.
Exactly. It is really crazy. those old trucks, I guess they make them good because still trucking.
Life tip, if you're ever kidnapped or somewhere where you shouldn't be, just leave a couple hair strands.
Yeah, exactly. People like taking their jewelry off and trying to like hide it. I
Mhm.
think that was like a tip that I heard one time.
I feel like we talked about that. Like there was some case, I don't know, that one of us covered at some point that the girl like tried to leave as much DNA as possible, like in a
Yes, smart.
car or something like that. Yeah, which is
Yeah.
really, really smart.
Keep that in the back of your mind, I guess.
Yeah. File that away in your brain cabinet because it's probably going to solve this unsolved case from 1995. Police are not saying that this case is solved, but they are naming him a suspect. They still consider this case unsolved and it's still ongoing. There's a lot they don't know, even though people pretty much think that it was him, it was Billy. We don't know how she was kidnapped. We don't know if anyone helped him. We don't know where Morgan's remains are. We don't know if she was killed. We don't know if she's still living her life. There's just a lot of unanswered questions that you can't just assume without an investigation. So police are still ongoing and they're interviewing people that knew Billy Lincks and family members, friends, neighbors. I'm sure they're going to go through all of the things. So it's still very much ongoing. So if you know anything, reach out to the Alma Police Department. What's crazy is this case is possibly going to be solved in our lifetime. And it was unsolved my entire life. I was born in 96 and I heard about this case pretty much my entire life. This is very positive for her, her family, the community, everyone that follows this case was pretty excited about this update. So,
I mean, we're pretty certain it's him. Do you think they need the body to completely close it?
no, I mean, I don't think that they ever really need a body if they have enough evidence. But in this case, all they have is a hair in a truck that belonged to Billy Lincks at one time. I don't think that that's necessarily enough information. Did someone else drive his truck sometimes? Did he kidnap her and then keep her somewhere? Did he kidnap her and take her to another state and just like drop her off somewhere? We don't know. So I think without a body, it would be hard, or without at least more information, more evidence against him that it was a kidnapping and killing or what have you.
Yeah, that's got to be scary, like for your parents growing up, hearing that story, just being in such like a public place as well. I mean, it's kind of scary for all parents these days, anyways. But I mean, I'm glad that they've made a DNA link. I'm glad that hopefully this will move forward. But like you said, I feel like they are going to have a hard time saying, like, actually stating it was him if they don't find remains. But even if they do find remains, I mean, there's got to be more DNA evidence.
Yeah.
You know?
I can only assume that police are probably searching his house. I'm sure that's enough to get a search warrant of his old house. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to come, but I agree with you. I think without any more evidence, it's going to be hard to say that he is the killer. Or, I mean, and also I hate to say the killer because, you know, her family is still posting pictures of what she would look like today. So they haven't given up hope that she could someday be found. And of course, everybody else hopes that as well. So
I told you guys about this documentary months ago. I'm sure neither of you watched it because you don't watch anything I tell you to watch. But on Hulu, there's a documentary on Melissa Witt, which Holly also covered.
I did. Yeah.
You watched it. But one of the investigators on that case, I mean, spoiler alert for the documentary, literally nothing happens. But one of the investigators on that case was playing in the Little League baseball game when Morgan Nick was kidnapped.
Ooh, interesting. Good connection, Kylie. How'd you figure that out? It would.
He talked about it in the doc.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh, little tie-in.
I did not remember that. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening to our case. And thank you for hearing our update on Morgan Nick. And if you know anything, be sure to contact the Alma Police Department. Even if you know who Billy Jack Lincks is, police may have questions for you. You can contact the Alma Police Department. And with that, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. If you want even more information about this case, you can go to overmydeadpod.com and be sure to follow us on social media at Over My Dead Pod on Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, all the things. And thank you for tuning in to another episode. Bye.
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 Okay, guys, if you're sticking around for overtime, we're going to jump in.
Okay, I'm going to start this off. I already know the answer. You guys have not watched it. Have you seen the new Monsters, the Eric and Lyle Menendez story on Netflix?
No, I plan to, but I haven't yet.
See, I haven't watched it and I don't plan on watching it. So
oh my God, you guys
I
are
know.
killing me.
I've heard so many, like, people have been raving about it, but I will say, that's not my cup of tea. I don't watch series that, like, I would rather watch a documentary. Like, I'm not going to watch a series about something.
For those who don't know, it's like a fictionalized version. Like they did the Jeffrey Dahmer one that everyone watched like last year or something.
Mm-hmm.
So they did the fictionalized version. Apparently, it is not accurate whatsoever. Who would have thought?
See, I saw something that said the opposite.
Well, the big discrepancy is if you know the Eric and Lyle Menendez story, two brothers who claim to have been like sexually abused by their father, and the mom is kind of abusive as well, or just dismissive of the father's abuse, and they end up killing the parents.
Yeah.
In the fictional TV show, they kind of hint at, sometimes say that the brothers had like an incestuous relationship and that the older brother also abused the younger brother due to like the father's abuse. And the brothers are like, that never happened. But there are like several episodes based on that.
Okay, see, obviously I haven't watched it, but I did watch like a news, like they were interviewing the two actors that played the Menendez brothers, and they were talking about how they went and visited the real life guys in prison and how that's like where they got a lot of the inspiration, and they talked to them about how the episodes were going to go, and like they gave them like a blessing basically. So that's why I'm like, I feel like maybe that all was true.
I don't know, because once it came out, the younger brother Eric said that he came out and said that none of that was true. But on Monday, Netflix is also dropping a new documentary in the brothers' words. Like the brothers are in it about the case.
Ooh, that'll be
That's
interesting.
so confusing. I will watch that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on Monday the 7th, there'll be a new documentary. So I guess I'll finish this fictional one and then compare the two. Because like, why else would they drop them back to back?
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you don't know this case, please go and research it. It's fantastic, but maybe we'll cover it someday. But it's very juicy. I hate to use those words. Oh, it's with this whole now fictional like portray of it and whatnot. It's obviously got a lot of people talking, a lot of people who didn't know much about the case before. And I feel like it's very controversial. Like people are like, oh, we totally believe that the brothers are innocent and should have been, or not, they killed their parents, obviously, but like they had reasoning and they shouldn't be in prison. And then some people were like, they're cold blood murderers, that was all for money. So there's definitely like two very polar opposite opinions.
Yeah, that's why I'm excited for the actual documentary, because I still don't know, because they claim the like sexual abuse and stuff, but that seems to like, in the fictional version at least, it comes up after they've already been arrested. It's like when it comes up and they start talking about that, and they have people to back it up, but it's family members who are still on their side.
But doesn't that kind of tell you, like, didn't it come out that like the aunt or cousin, it was like an immediate family member almost.
Yeah.
Completely backed them up on the abuse.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a pretty big thing.
It is. But
and
still, like,
next week when the thing comes out, they're probably going to talk about abuse stuff because they want to look, regardless of whether or not it's true.
Yeah. It's just like,
what happened?
I don't know what happened. I don't know yet. I haven't made up my mind.
I kind of have. But now I need to watch the series because I feel like maybe that'll change my mind. But prior, I kind of had an idea of like which way I flowed.
I don't want to like discount or minimize like a victim's story if they like say abuse happened. Like I'm, 100% on your side. But I think the timing of it was a little bit sketch.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it happened or not.
I do agree because it was also people didn't understand and really blew it quite out of proportion. But like the whole them spending lots of money after their parents' death was like not a really good look on them. And I still agree to this day it was not a good look. But then family members came out and said this was normal and like they were a very large spending family.
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree. It could go either way.
Yeah. I haven't seen it. I plan on watching it. I don't have an opinion because I just want to wait to watch the documentary and then wait to hear their statements. But
Kylie, it comes out on Netflix?
Yes.
Okay, on Monday,
October the 7th.
7th. Okay.
The biggest thing to come out of this new television series is how hot the actors playing the brothers are.
See, we haven't watched it, so like I'm not.
I sent you guys a TikTok.
I did watch that. Yeah.
It has like 20 million views. It's like a edit of, in my opinion, the hotter brother.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's just, for our listeners too, let's just say this really quickly. I'm married, Holly's engaged, and Kylie is single. So she's the one bringing this up. Okay, everybody listen, make sure you understand that. I did see the video. I did see the video. He is an attractive dude, but also Kylie, he's like 24.
No, I looked it up. He's 25.
Oh, I guess it doesn't really matter in this group anyways, does it? Like,
yeah, what are you talking about, girl?
It doesn't matter. Never mind. I take it back.
Also, even if you're married, you can still say, okay, that guy's hot.
Yeah.
It's not like I have a chance with him anyways.
It's the hair for me that doesn't do it. So.
I feel like people always do this with serial killer documentaries. Last time 100%. It was Dahmer, it was, what's his name?
They fantasize.
Evan Peters.
I mean, I know that stars are attractive, but it seems like TikTok just blows up with people who are like getting a little too into the serial killer people that played them and the serial killers in general.
And I was going to say, and the actual serial killers.
Yeah.
Okay, good segue, because my next topic was, do you guys know about Wade Wilson?
Yes. And his jailhouse calls.
Yes. For the listeners, very, very, very bad man, murdered 2 people, was extremely abusive. I don't know, apparently has head trauma, complete psychopath. He happens to be very tall and very attractive, according to TikTok girlies. Prior to the face tats, he now has a bunch of face tats, and he also has swastikas tattooed on his face. So now all these TikTok girlies are like, oh, he's hot, and now are claiming that he is innocent because he's hot. In my opinion, it is, if he wasn't 6'7" and he was like 5'5", this wouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
Okay, but also everybody needs to go and look up pictures in like his case. He is a psychopath. The dude is a bloody murder kill, like absolutely psycho. And then not to mention, I don't care how attractive you think someone is, his whole entire face is tattooed with scary ass shit.
Yeah, he's an attractive looking fellow.
Guys.
But these women, what my biggest problem is with these people is that he is in prison, awaiting his
death row.
Death row. Oh, sorry. He's on death row.
Mm-hmm.
And women are calling him and like are lined up to go put money on this man's commissary books. And you can listen to the jailhouse recordings of because they record all conversations on the phone. In case you didn't know that, some people don't, because they obviously catch themselves in bad situations. But yeah, these women are calling him every day. He's like got girlfriends, and actually I've heard maybe boyfriends too. That are putting money on his books, and it's so ridiculous because they call him and he's like, hey baby, like, how are you doing? Like, I love you. And he's like, hey, by the way, you gonna put money on my book? We gotta have our orders in by Sunday. And they're like, yeah, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna, like, And what's the end goal? He's on death row. Like, what are you?
I mean,
What's
there's
the
tons,
point?
you guys, there's tons of people. Women really fantasize criminals sometimes, but like there's tons of people that get married to someone in prison that they've never even like seen in person or
It's
have
crazy.
never touched, or like it's just, I get the whole pen pal situation, but like to start a relationship with someone in prison, especially on death row, nuts.
Insane.
Bonkers.
Both
This
of
dude
the
is psycho. I cannot stop saying that. He was so abusive.
I keep seeing TikToks of girls coming out that he dated like before all of that shit went down, like them posting pictures of like them together like at concerts and at festivals, and like multiple women keep pulling up on TikTok, and people are calling him a hobosexual because he would just date and sleep with women for a place to stay. And then like all these TikToks are like, oh my God, I can't believe I dated a serial killer. Blah blah blah. But like they're all like lovey dovey. Like they're obviously still into it. I don't know what
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is.
It's something in your head that's not right if you're
But
doing that.
do you guys also remember? I don't know if you saw it, but like when he was getting arraigned and stuff, and they were saying like you're going to like you're going to be on death row, you're going to prison for life, death row, blah blah blah. He literally sat there with no expression on his face and just stared. Like it was so ugh. The dude's a ugh, yucky.
He has
No bueno.
zero morals,
Yeah.
zero ethics, zero guilt.
Doesn't give a shit.
No.
Zero future. What are you girls doing?
People are lonely. You guys got to sign up for Tinder.
Yeah. Maybe they should sponsor us because
Yeah, this episode is brought to you by Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge.
We'll set up a prison service, but Tinder.
There is one.
Yeah, see, Cameron's looking at the pictures right now. So Cameron, no, the whole thing is if you go and look at pictures of him, everybody was like, "Oh my God, he's so hot! Like he's one of the hottest criminals ever."
Tell him he's
Well,
6'7".
He's
Also.
6'7". Yeah, but also when he committed the murders and was really abusive, he didn't have any of the face tats. And then when he went to, I think it was like his second time in court, he showed up with all of them. It wasn't like a slow thing; it was all like at once.
so Kylie, you think it's just because he's tall?
I think I mean he is attractive, but even if he looked the same way he did and he was a foot shorter, I don't think he would be getting this attention.
Kylie totally calls the prison and gives him money for his books.
Yeah. I do not.
Yeah.
I do not. I just want to put it on the record. I do not.
Oh, Kylie, you're one of them, aren't you?
I am not.
You're sick and twisted. No,
She's
okay.
like, yeah, he is hot
People
though.
were also doing this with and this is disgusting to even say, but people were doing that with the what is it? The Idaho killer,
Yeah.
Brian
Yeah.
Koberger.
Brian Koberger. Yeah, they were doing that with him as well. I would get on TikTok and it'd be like this like thirst trap video of Brian Koberger. I'm like, who the are you people? Like, what are you doing?
It's a fascination. Like people have, I mean, they do it with all really big criminals.
I want someone to write a psychology book about this. This is insane.
My theory is, oh, he's a bad boy. He like murders people, but he loves me.
He's not gonna kill me.
He won't do that to me because he loves me so much.
You're so special.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah, that's all it is, I think. I think you're right. Ugh.
But Brian Koberger? Not hot.
Girl. Mm-mm. See, it's
Put that
just
on the record.
It's dangerous that women like. What? Like, who are you?
I don't know. It must be all those like mafia movies and TV shows we grew up with.
I guess.
Gangsters are like, oh, he's a bad boy. He goes out and murders people, but he comes home for dinner.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, guys. I have a scheduled phone call with Wade Wilson. So bye.
Bye.
Bye.